Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into a tough love wake-up call about why so many people just stay broke. We're unpacking a really fascinating piece of source material called The Architecture of Financial Freedom, and let me tell you, this is definitely not your standard dry financial advice. It's a complete teardown of the systems and the daily habits that keep us literally trapped in a cycle of financial stress. We're going to look closely at the architecture of our choices and, more importantly, how we can redesign them. Because, if you've ever felt like you're running on a treadmill, working incredibly hard, but never actually moving forward financially, well, this explainer is built exactly for you. We are going to break down the hidden traps, the structural mistakes, and the major mindset shifts you need to finally build real wealth.
So, I want to hook you immediately by asking a really hard question. Why are you still broke? I know it might sting a little bit to hear, but we really need to strip away the usual excuses we all lean on. When we ask ourselves this, our minds instantly jump to the standard defenses, right? We blame our current job, we blame our salary, we blame the state of the broader economy. But the source material makes a highly compelling and honestly somewhat uncomfortable argument. Those external factors, they aren't the root cause. There's a much deeper structural reason that dictates why you wake up, go to work, get paid, spend money, and just repeat that cycle endlessly. And it feels totally normal because everyone around you is doing the exact same thing. But hey, just because it's normal doesn't mean it's right.
Here is the absolute fundamental truth that we consistently miss. The system rewards smart money decisions. Think about your education for a second. Schools spend years teaching us complex math, the intricacies of history, science, but they completely skip over the actual mechanics of building wealth. We are literally never taught how to escape that relentless paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. And because of that, we grow up ingrained with this massive misconception. We think, oh, if I just work harder, I'll inevitably earn more and become wealthy. But hard work alone is just not the lever that moves the financial world. The system we live in doesn't automatically reward you for being physically or mentally exhausted. It's designed to reward smart, strategic money decisions. You aren't broke because you don't earn enough. You're broke because you were never taught the rules of how money actually operates.
And that fundamental misunderstanding, it leads directly to 3 specific behavioral traps that are actively keeping you broke. The source material breaks this down into a triad of major errors. First up, emotional spending. Second, relying on a single income stream. And third, saving instead of growing. These are not just random bad habits. They are deep structural flaws in how we manage our resources. The crazy part is, most people are committing at least one of these errors every single day. And honestly, a lot of people are committing all 3 without even realizing it. But by bringing these mistakes out into the light, we can finally start to deconstruct them. So let's break down each one individually to understand exactly how they're draining our wealth.
Okay, let's look at that very first trap, emotional spending. You see, we don't just spend strategically based on our actual needs, we spend emotionally to regulate our moods. We've all been there, right? You have a totally brutal week at work, so you treat yourself to a ridiculously expensive takeout meal or maybe the latest tech gadget, just to feel human again. It is a quick, guaranteed hit of dopamine. But here's the tragic reality highlighted by the source. That good feeling inevitably fades. The thrill of the new gadget wears off, the overpriced gourmet burger is eaten, but the money you traded for that temporary emotional boost, it is gone forever. You're literally trading your long-term financial freedom for a fleeting, short-term mood enhancement. Recognizing when you're spending just to soothe an emotion rather than fulfill a real need is your first major step to plugging the leaks in your bank account.
And that brings us to the second mistake, which revolves around the loneliest, most dangerous number in all of personal finance, the number 1. Relying on exactly one income stream, which is usually your primary salary, is an incredibly precarious way to live. The source material uses a fantastic analogy here. Relying on one salary is exactly like trying to stand on one leg. I mean, it might feel perfectly fine while the wind is calm, right? But all it takes is one sudden push, maybe a company downsizing, a medical emergency, or a sudden shift in the economy, and you completely fall over. There's absolutely no balance, no backup, and zero safety net. When your entire financial architecture rests on a single pillar, your financial life is inherently fragile.
Which leads right into our third trap, confusing saving money with growing money. We've all been taught that hoarding cash in a bank account is the ultimate responsible financial behavior. And yeah, saving your money feels incredibly safe. It just sits there, seemingly protected. But the source delivers a pretty hard truth here. Safe simply does not make you rich. Because of inflation, that invisible thief that's constantly eroding your purchasing power. Money that just sits there is actually slowly losing its value. Saving is a purely defensive move. If you want to actually break the cycle and build the architecture of true wealth, you've got to shift to an offensive strategy. You have to grow your money. Growth involves putting your resources to work so that they multiply over time. That is the only real way to build wealth and genuinely break the cycle.
Now here is a pivotal mindset shift, a real game changer that separates those who stay trapped from those who actually escape. Most people will look at a price tag and immediately ask, how can I afford this? But that question is inherently limiting. It forces you to look at your current finite pool of resources, and usually it results in the pretty depressing answer of, I can't. Wealthy people, though, they do not think in limits. They think in opportunities. When they look at something they want, they ask, how can I create money for this? Do you see the difference there? The first question shuts your brain down entirely. But that second question, it forces your brain to go to work to find solutions, to innovate, and to discover open doors you never even knew were there.
Armed with that expansive mindset, the idea of creating opportunity rather than just accepting limits, let's dive into the solution. The source provides a highly practical 3-step blueprint to finally break your financial cycle and redesign your life. Step 1 is all about income generation. Step 2 is about resource management. And Step 3 is about wealth multiplication. And listen, these aren't abstract pie-in-the-sky theories. These are concrete actions you can literally begin implementing today. Let's walk through each of these 3 vital steps, one by one, to see how they practically apply to your daily routine.
So step 1 tackles that standing on one leg problem directly. You need to build just one small extra income stream. And the brilliant thing here is that you don't need to quit your day job or become the next tech billionaire to get started. You simply need to build one additional, manageable stream of income to give yourself a second leg to stand on. This could be literally anything: offering a freelance service for just a few hours a week, creating and selling simple digital products online, or even starting a small investment portfolio that pays dividends. The goal isn't to magically replace your salary overnight. The goal is to break the absolute monopoly that your single employer has over your financial survival.
Moving to step 2, and this relies on a rule that almost sounds like magic, but it is actually pure financial physics. Money you don't track disappears, period. If you aren't giving every single dollar, euro, or dirham a specific job, your wealth is just going to vanish into the ether. And this circles right back to solving that emotional spending mistake we talked about. When you don't have clear visibility into your finances, it is incredibly easy for those small, emotionally driven purchases to add up to a massive drain on your resources. Tracking your money isn't about restricting yourself or living some miserable penny-pinching life. It's simply about awareness. It is about taking absolute control and telling your money exactly where to go, rather than getting to the end of the month and wondering where on earth it all went.
And finally, step 3 requires flipping your entire financial routine completely upside down. Invest first, spend later. Most people do the exact opposite. They get paid, they pay their bills, they buy what they want, and then they try to save or invest whatever tiny fraction of pennies happens to be left over at the end. And let's be real, usually there's nothing left. To build the architecture of financial freedom, you absolutely must invert that equation. Every single time you get paid, you have to adopt the one critical habit that separates the wealthy from everyone else. You pay your future self before you pay anyone else. You take your growth money off the top, you put it to work, and then, and only then, you live your current life on whatever remains.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to internalize this core truth. If you have been struggling financially, please let go of the guilt. You aren't broke because you are uniquely unlucky or because you're lacking intelligence. You certainly aren't broke because you aren't working hard enough. The reality is so much simpler and honestly a lot more forgiving. You simply didn't know the rules of the game. Our entire societal system is set up to keep you consuming rather than building. But the beautiful thing about rules is that they can be learned. And today, through diving into this source material, those rules have been revealed to you. The veil has finally been lifted.
So I will leave you with this final thought. As the old saying goes, once you know better, you do better. The ignorance of the system is no longer an excuse holding you back. You know the traps of emotional spending. You understand the danger of relying on a single income. You know the crucial difference between just saving and actually growing your wealth. And you have a concrete 3-step blueprint to fix it all. The architecture of your financial freedom is literally in your hands right now. So now that you know the rules, what exactly is your next move?